So yeah, I noticed on the big banner like this upstairs that it was Approachable projects on the web of 2106. I will say I'm not from the future. We'll hopefully can fix it by then. So yeah, we're at a CSS conference, so I have to say this at least once, and I hopefully will get it right. Specificity. Oh, my speaker notes are on the slides. Tell them where you work. People like it, maybe it seems to. Okay, get going. So, I am a front-end developer in lovely Berlin. I work at FinLeap. Feel free to chat to me about it later. And much like every fantastic best man speech, we'll start with Merriam-Webster, the world's third greatest dictionary. They define approachable as easy to talk to or deal with or able to be reached or approached. And I came up with the title and the abstract and kind of thought, well, somebody must have said approachable software at some point, right? There's blog posts for everything. I mean, there must be 1 million Medium articles written a day about JavaScript. Somebody's going to have done something at some point. And no. So I kind of thought, okay, approachable. How can we take that and put it onto software? So let's say ease of approach. The easier it is to go up to somebody and chat to them, the more approachable they are. The easier it is for you to go up to a new project, move into a new team, the more approachable the project is. So then I thought, well, optimizing projects for ease of approach in the web of 2016, but that's a mouthful. So let's do a very scientific poll. How many people in the room have written somewhere vaguely similar to software? Okay, cool. Now keep your hands up, keep your hands up. Okay, keep your hand up if you've written something vaguely software-like that somebody else has used. Nice. There's a few hands went up there. How did that? Okay. Told you it was very scientific. Okay, keep your hand up if you've written something vaguely software-like that somebody else has used without your help. Ooh, and more hands going up in the back. Okay, now, keep your hand up if you've written something vaguely software-like that somebody else has offered new code for, opened an issue on, or otherwise collaborated with you. Oh, great, I can go home. We don't need this. Okay, so approachability. Optimizing for ease of approach, optimizing for your first run experience in such a way that when you're 3 years down the line, your project is still as approachable as it was to the new contributors, and you can keep your current contributors happy. And this is both in open source and in teams, right? Like, if you've got a great onboarding experience, but you've got a turnover rate of 4 devs a day, that probably means that your onboarding is great, but your environment is terrible. And importantly, your projects are only as approachable as you make them. Now, because I couldn't find any Medium posts to blatantly steal from, I'm going to have to define approachability in software. And I thought, because good things come in threes, let's do the triforce of approachability. Accessibility, automation, and amicability. That's a rule of 3 and alliteration. We're on fire. So if you can hit all 3 of these in your projects, you're on the right track to getting new contributors and creating a space where you can keep them. So let's switch to the navigation slide. This is how you'll tell where I am, because I'll go like this. So let's talk about accessibility. Now, I know we're at a CSS conference. Presumably, most of you are vaguely related to the web in some way, so accessibility may mean the A11Y style, ARIA, all that kind of thing. But I want to talk about accessibility on a personal level, from a more human perspective. And Kate Hedelson has 3 areas in which people new to a project, whether that's joining a new team, coming into open source, need to develop to become reliably independent and can contribute on their own. So we spend a lot of time when we're starting a new project, for example, at work, and you're going to throw out your Angular 1x app and use React 0.15, and it's going to be great, and then you're going to throw that away when React 0.16 comes out. And we spend a lot of time trying to keep track of all these new frameworks and new ideas, and we come to places like this because we apparently don't get enough of that on the internet. I don't know what you're doing, I get tons. But you've also got project and team structure. So that's everything from your internal tooling, how you build, right through to just the way the code is laid out, your conventions that you use, all these unwritten rules that are invariably written in a wiki somewhere that somebody wrote 5 years ago, and if anybody does find them, they think they're the right things, and suddenly, no, that'll change in the big wiki crash of 2008 or something. And this is the domain-specific engineering knowledge that a new contributor needs to become a regular contributor. You can fix their mistakes once. If somebody on the team already has to fix their mistakes every single time they want new code, that's not sustainable. But then thirdly, you've got personal development. I guess a lot of people here have heard a company suggest that they're really committed to personal development of their developers, for want of a better way of putting that, when really it just means they'll spend money and send you to things, but they don't really care about the end result. And part of becoming a contributing member of the project is more to do with the confidence. So the confidence to suggest changes, the confidence to say, hey, these docs are terrible and don't work. I'm going to spend 4 hours this morning fixing them. The ability to research problems as well. If you're going into an established code base of years and years and years, and your job isn't to tear it all apart and start over, you need to be able to debug somebody's code that may not have been touched in a while, and the engineer may have since left. Like, you have big problems there. So debugging independently, and really importantly, to make the judgment calls that are non-trivial. Everybody can bike shed a color, but when you have to make the decision to either refactor everything because it's not working the way you need it to, that's impossible if you don't have an approachable project. And I think that's what we all really want at the end of the day. We want to be able to work on software that is pleasant to be around. We want to work in environments that are pleasant to be in. And maintainer burnout is real. Like, you see it a lot in JavaScript because publishing modules is so easy, and the amount of things where people suggest, oh, this library is unmaintained, it hasn't been updated in 4 weeks, oh, we can't use it, it's terrible. And sometimes projects are done. They've solved the problem. And that's okay. You can say, hey, I'm not going to maintain this. This isn't going to get new features. It works with everything I need it to. Sorry, I've fixed my problem. And that's fine. If it also fixes your problem, great. If not, you can check GitHub and the awesome lists and everything. So, in speaking of researching libraries, how great is it to see all these brilliant buzzwords where unicornThunderstorm.js has all the doodads you need to foo and bar your components with server-side tomfoolery. That's great if you do need to foo and bar your components with server-side tomfoolery, but if you don't know how to foo and bar your components, never mind on the client or the server, that's not really terribly approachable. So suggesting that the problem that you solve in the simplest possible way in like the first paragraph of your README and the GitHub description and the NPM description and the Bower whatever they use, description, just having a succinct version of that is amazing. It means that I can immediately evaluate, I know exactly the problem that I have, I've been working on the code for X amount of months, I need something that fits in this slot, and the NPM module system is fantastic, and NPM itself is the largest package manager in the world, and they're Lego bricks. If you don't have the right size brick, and you can't tell what the size of the brick is, how do you know you've fixed your problem? Pause for effect. Oh, sorry, I'm reading my speaker notes again. So it leads to a good talking point. We need to optimize our documentation for the base case, and that will never not be helpful. If you come back to the code in 3 years and you need to make use of that API that you spec'd out one late night because you thought you might need it in the future, somebody having documented that, most likely yourself, 3 years later is really going to save you. And it doesn't matter if you've been working on it for 3 years. We have big libraries, we have big frameworks, we have big surface areas to do things with. And the people for whom unicornThunderstorm.js could be the exact library to solve the problem they're facing, they're never going to look into it, and they're never going to find it if you don't tell them what it is. Not everybody can evaluate code and just say, oh, perfect, this is exactly what I need. Because also naming things is hard, and if your function is named the way that I want it to be, but it doesn't actually do that thing, also bad. Handy tidbit. So once you have your new contributors on board, your project is getting some use by external people by starting with full swathes of fantastically searchable, beautifully formatted documentation. The amount of use is going to skyrocket. You very, very rarely see one of those viral product hunt what do people do on the internet? I don't know, Hacker News, all that kind of thing. You never see one of them hitting the top page, the front, the whatever they call it, without good documentation, without a good tagline, without the elevator pitch of your project in front and center. This is what it does. And when I'm out in the wilderness of GitHub looking for interesting tools and libraries and ideas, I fairly often notice a typo in some docs. It happens, we're all human, it's fine. And occasionally, if that thing turns out to solve a problem I have, and if my typo fix gets merged, which I've got 95 closed pull requests with typo in the title, and my merge rate is about 92%. So it's a pretty high for single word, cool, done. If that library solves my problem, I'm already incentivized to help more, especially if that library solves a problem that I'm having, but I can foresee a future case in which it's not going to solve it. I can extend it because I know that the environment is good for me. So to talk a little about your first PR, your first pull request, it's a fantastic initiative, once again by Charlotte, who's speaking at Scotland.js on tomorrow? Tomorrow or Friday? Oh, they're tweeting. Yes. So yeah, it's a fantastic initiative, basically geared around having very well explained GitHub issues that new contributors can pull up, say, okay, I've never used Git, I've never used GitHub, but I want to help. And these kind of initiatives are fantastic, and there aren't enough of them, and Charlotte can't do it all themselves. I'm getting a shaking head for the camera at home. So I thought I'd look on what my first pull request was, and it was a typo fix, developer to developer. And it turns out that nobackend.org was organized by some pretty amazing people. And this led me down the road to get a little involved with Hoodie. And I'll not go into what Hoodie is. Find me in the discussion track. We can have a big chat about it and how great it is. But importantly, it's got one of the most inclusive, inviting, and altogether friendly communities in software that I've ever heard of, never mind met. Getting a tiny bit involved in Hoodie was the force that pushed me to consider keeping up programming when I thought all hope was lost. And it led to me getting the job that I have now. Getting people into open source and making it as easy as possible can literally change lives. And I'm very, very glad that I get to take to the same stage a year later and again thank Hoodie. And out of Hoodie came some tooling too. You may have heard of Greenkeeper or Semantic Release for those of you who are more JavaScript inclined. And these are the tools that take the hassle out of maintaining software and let you focus on JavaScript, the good parts, as it were. Which brings me to the second point in the triforce of approachability, automation. Automation is your and your new contributor's best friend and handiest asset. The more time you can save to get new code into your project, the quicker your turnaround time on converting drive-by typo fixes into full contributing committers. And the more that you can be sure that the code doesn't break existing behavior, the better. Just because I'm not sure how clear that is, that's Terminator. I don't know which movie it's from. Feel free to let me figure that out or tell me in the discussion track. So automation, what can you automate? Well, the things that are most helpful are testing, deploying, and releasing your code. Now, deploy and release are kind of similar. You might have a staging environment for deployment, but that's fine. Something where you get your code out onto something so you can see the effects of your changes. And there are a whole swathe of tools that can help you out in this regard. So let's walk through some examples of things that you can do. We can talk more in the discussion track about specifics, about config, about whatever you want, and it's fine. And this is the best thing about optimizing for approachability. I make it sound like there's all these, thousands of vaguely logged in GitHub users who have never done anything and they're just wandering about projects going, ooh, that looks fun, ooh, that looks fun. And it's not. The best thing about automation and optimizing for this use case is it benefits everybody. It doesn't matter if it's, you're John Ressig and you're doing jQuery. If you can release that quickly, it's fine. It's better. It's nice. It takes all of the dull, non-programming bits out of it. So these are, the three rough phases that I want to talk through for tooling and nice ideas. Testing is everything from code style checks like linting or formatting right through to checking the actual functionality of your code once it's deployed on the website. So let's start with testing. Now, code conventions are the way of structuring your code. They're semi-important. I say that they're only kind of important because a lot of the conventions that you follow can be automatically fixed. And anything that can be fixed by a computer, do it. It's great. And it makes it really helpful when somebody opens a pull request and you can either say, hey, could you just run JS hint or JS CS ---- fix and clean up the pull request, and then you get rid of all the white space changes or stuff that their editors put in for them, and you can focus on the meat of the pull request. So, shouldn't start a sentence while I'm taking a drink. Linters are the tools that you want to do this. So, the appropriately named style lint lints your styles. Style FMT, FMTs your styles. And because I had to look it up, it's apparently format, it's a fixer for style lint. Super helpful for making sure that your CSS conventions are followed, avoiding errors in your style sheets, and really helpful for new contributors and even people who may be established CSS professionals, because you type quick and you might miss a semicolon and all of a sudden the world burns down. ESLint, it lints your ES. I think that's all I have to say about that. Broadly, same thing as style lint, but for your JavaScript. So unit and integration tests are where you start seeing the benefits quicker when you're reviewing pull requests. So unit tests are testing individual units of code, hence the name. Integration tests are testing the integration of that code into the wider the website, the bigger framework, that kind of thing. And depending on your stack, there are kind of different ways of going about unit tests. We saw unit tests in Sass, that was really cool. We've got unit tests in JavaScript, and there are 400 different libraries and tools out there that allow you to do that, and you can find many Medium posts comparing, contrasting them, and telling them that the other 399 are absolutely terrible because and yeah. And for CSS, you can, for CSS integration tests, I should say, you should definitely check out visual regression testing. Thankfully, one of our illustrious MCs, Kevin Lawrence, hi Kevin, gave a fantastic talk at a few user groups in Germany and at CSSConf Budapest about it. It's a test that measures your website versus screenshots that you define. So when you're refactoring a site with, you know, a sitemap 200 pages deep, and you want to make sure that changing this one seemingly innocuous, really specific looking class name doesn't affect 40 pages that you've kind of forgotten about because they're localized or whatever, you can feel like you have superpowers because you run this thing and it tells you, yeah, you're grand, which is pretty cool. And it also means that new contributors can get involved in refactoring projects, which is actually not a thing. It's very, very difficult for somebody to do a drive-by pull request in the midst of a refactor. Hands up anybody who has ever done that. You ever walked by somebody's desk and said, oh, you want to fix that? Pete? Oh, hola. No, I expected a few. But, yeah, testing is the only way to ensure that what we see is what's really there. And as the very excited Kevin can attest to here, the only way that we can trust our code does what we intend is testing. So deploy and release. Deployment and releasing is basically let new contributors, like current contributors, let anybody do as little of this as possible. It's very, very easy to make the wrong Docker image, push it to production, and all of a sudden there's, I don't know, console logs, Redux is spamming the console in the production app, oh no. Don't really know what happens at that point, but it's probably bad. So you really want to get as close to this as possible, just a big friendly green button that says send my code into the wild. And as it turns out, doing this can be quite hard, but there's a super handy service that integrates really well with GitHub and other repository hosting providers that I really like, Travis CI. And Travis CI or other CI CI web apps, websites. Does anyone care about the distinction? Discussion track. So you can run your test suite on branches, on pull requests. You can make sure that the unit test won't break when you merge to master. Super helpful. And the team are always working to continuously improve their continuous integration system. So you can take advantage of some pretty cool features. I very recently was at the Node community meetup in Berlin. and discovered that they've got now the version 3 of their API that allows you to manually trigger builds without pushing commits to GitHub, which is really helpful to keep your repository clear, and you could run nightly builds, you could run all kinds of things, which is really cool. And if you don't want to use Travis, if you're locked into another CI or somebody's decided that you're doing something else and you're on GitHub, the GitHub integrations directory, which you can get to on your settings or /integrations, that's the link to the directory itself. You can integrate with a ton of stuff, and you can basically get as close as possible to the big friendly green button. And in the immortal words of Hitchhiker's Guide, don't panic. If you're learning about these tools and ideas for the first time, that's okay. These things take time and effort and are comparably difficult to do in comparison to not doing them. If, on the other hand, you're already auto-releasing, auto-updating, accepting and merging pull requests with confidence, that's fantastic. Don't panic about the things that you need to care about. Don't panic about hundreds of open issues. Don't panic about burnout. Burnout is a really real problem in open source, and it can't be stressed enough. When I'm saying don't panic, it sounds like I'm saying, like, ignore it, just don't panic about it, it's fine. But what I'm trying to say is you can take time off, that's okay. There's even an unmaintained.tech to say, slap that in your GitHub repo, and because everybody loves badges, there's an SVG badge. Says, look, I've put it up, my hands are up now, this is unsupported. And the final point of approachability is amicability. So the long and the short of codes of conduct is you should have one. Cool? Great. So contributor covenant is a handy one. Don't just copy and paste it, because you need to actually do enforcement for it to mean anything. And you need a plan in place to enforce it, as Pete demonstrated very well this morning. GitHub recently launched a feature that allows you to add a default issue template, which is really helpful if you're having particular problems with specific browsers, and if somebody raises an issue on Safari on an iPad 4 or something, it's really helpful if you can get that information as quickly as possible. Language that's inclusive is language that doesn't alienate people. It includes them instead of excluding them. My first one is getting pronouns right. I'm still working on it, and I still need to rejig my brain. But I managed to get rid of guys, so I'm hopeful that it's going to work. And on that, guys is not a gender-inclusive way of addressing a group of people. Everybody might not like being called guys. And if you take issue or umbrage with the singular they, if it's good enough for Jane Austen, it's good enough for me. And thanks to a Slackbot response that made the rounds a few months ago that Stefan Bernemann set up on the Hoodie community Slack, you kind of get tricked into not typing guys or all that kind of thing. But really, at the end of the day, while we do software and while we are always thinking in the mind of a computer, we're just humans. We're going to make mistakes. We want to make it friendly. We want to make it nice. We want our projects to be as approachable as we are. We're a community of humans, and as Raquel Velez said, we're all in this together. So if somebody can learn React in a day, then we should work on learning to be better humans. That's another Charlotte quote. So, accessibility, automation, and amicability. If you can hit all three of these, you're on the right path. That's been Approachable Projects on the Web of 2016. Thanks very much.